guys, welcome back to the best place for new and aspiring lawyers on all things law school, the legal industry, and the lawyering life. If you're new here, I'm Angela Vorpahl of angelavorpahl.com, and I'm so excited for today's video topic because we're talking all about alternative careers for lawyers. So other things that you can do with your law degree that don't necessarily involve practicing law, and also how to go about making that transition, because both of those pieces of the puzzle are incredibly important. And so for today's video, if you haven't yet subscribed, make sure you hit subscribe and tap that notification bell so that you can see all new videos along these same topics every other week. And if you're excited to jump in, smash that like button and let's go. To help us through all of this craziness and talking about alternative careers for lawyers, we have a very special guest today, Alex Su. Alex is the Director of Business Development at Evasort in the legal tech space in San Francisco. And Alex is also a very avid poster on LinkedIn. And so you guys should absolutely give him a follow. He talks all about law school and navigating the legal industry. And his content is so raw and so genuine. You guys are going to love it. So please welcome Alex Su.
Thanks for having me, Angela. I'm really excited to be here today.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so excited to have you. So let's go ahead and dive in, because I know we talked about the two biggest elements of sort of navigating a non-legal career is one, knowing what your options are, and two, the reality of actually making that transition. And so with sort of your story and how you started out, why did you originally go to law school? What did you think you were going to do with your law degree? And where did you start working right out of law school?
Yeah, I wanted to be a trial lawyer. I went to law school because, I don't know if it was because I watched too many lawyer movies like A Few Good Men, but I really wanted to be in the courtroom. I really enjoyed the idea of being someone to persuade people working in front of juries. So I went to the best law school I could. I went to Northwestern for law school. And after law school, I got a job at a big law firm, Sullivan and Cromwell in New York. But before I went there, I actually clerked for a federal judge out in Chicago. So I took a pretty standard path into law and what I thought were pretty difficult jobs to get. But that's how I started off my legal career. But as we'll talk about, things kind of went off in a different direction a little bit afterwards.
Yeah, and that's absolutely where I want to go next, because sort of transitioning out of big law is a very common path. I think it's something like half of associates leave within the first 3 years, 80% leave within the first 5 years. And so, yeah, there is a lot of transition out of big law. And I think one of the most common questions is, well, what do I do next? Or if I don't want to do this, what can I do? Or how do I even start making that transition? And so what were some of the indicators for you that you were ready to leave big law and try something else?
It wasn't something that I figured out overnight. I think it was a culmination of a lot of different experiences. So, one experience I had was, we were working on a very big and important case, and there was a partner who was in charge of. We were supposed to be doing creating a privilege log for for our client. So, for us as junior associates, and you know this because you've been an associate as well. It was a lot of grunt work, a lot of collecting information and organizing it. And we hopped on this conference call along with the partner. This partner is somebody who graduated from a top law school, has 15 years of experience, lots of great experience. And I thought that he would be talking about, strategic aspects of the case. But I realized that, on the call very quickly, he was actually being quizzed by the client on very specific aspects of the priv log. And in my mind, I thought, well, wow, this is crazy. Like, if I'm a year or two out of law school, I get that that's part of my job. But when a partner's doing that, I thought, well, maybe this is not the right path for me. Maybe this is not what I want to do for 10 or 15 years, 15 years out. That was probably the first moment I thought, well, I got to do something different. And I think my first goal was to get out of big law, because I felt like that might have been a unique aspect of big law. So I wasn't always determined to get out of law. It was just, I knew that big law was not a right fit for me. I figured that out pretty early on. But there were a lot of stories like that where I looked at the lives of the partners at the firm, and I didn't really want that life. So I started exploring and thinking about, what else can I do?
That's so amazing. And I love that, because I know a lot of people sort of get those inklings, and then, the process that comes next of, figuring out what your skill set or what your interests might sort of tailor themselves towards, I know is really, really tough. And so how did you find the legal tech space, and how did you sort of come to the conclusion that maybe your abilities or your interests might be better tailored to a job in the legal tech space than in a traditional private firm?
Yeah, so I actually I'm not an early adopter of technology. I never thought I'd be working in technology. Some of the factors were that, after I left Big Law, I tried a couple of different jobs. I moved to California from New York. And as you know, in the Bay Area, tech is pretty big. So I knew that this was the right environment for a tech career. But I started working at a smaller firm. That wasn't a good fit. I opened my own firm. That didn't work out. And so I think through those experiences, I realized very quickly what I was good at, what I wasn't good at, what I liked and what I didn't like. And what I really liked was the ability to work with people. I wanted to do client-facing work, which you can't really do in law unless you've worked for many years. So, and this goes back to why I wanted to go to law school in the first place. I wanted to be a trial lawyer. I wanted to persuade people. And so I started thinking, well, what was my favorite part about being a solo practitioner? Because I opened my own firm, right? And it was sales and marketing. And I thought, well, what can I do with my legal background? I'm 5 years, 6 years out of law school. I was 33 at the time. I felt like it was scary to start over, but I had a hunch. I had a hunch that I was really good at doing sales and marketing. I had a hunch that I could bring my background in legal to some type of role. And I quickly found that there was a small and growing space called legal tech. At the time, it was mostly e-discovery, but a couple of others. And I thought, well, let's try to start over and maybe do a job that I know I can do well at. And so it was almost like an experiment when I first went into legal tech. There was no grand plan. There was no 5-10 year goals. It was just, let me get into this and try to do well.
And one of the things that I think is sort of a scary aspect of pursuing a different career path and trying something new, and I think the reason that a lot of people wind up not leaving the firms where they are, even if they're not 100% happy with their career, is because there's this unknown aspect, and it can take years. I'm just based on your stories, going to a new firm, starting your firm, going into a new space. Like you said, it doesn't happen overnight, and sometimes it doesn't happen in weeks or months either. It can take years, but the most important piece of it is you got to try new things. There's not going to be an immediate answer right away. Transition from private practice to now early legal career coach, I tried things for 2.5 years before I fell on, realizing that I really, really love this kind of work. And so it's a frustrating reality, but in order to do yourself that favor, you have to give yourself the time and space to try new things. And for a lot of us, especially if you're working in a private law firm, you don't have that time and space to try different things and to reach out. And a lot of the times you have to transition out of that in order to start going down the path that you think you would really be interested in.
I completely agree. I think where a lot of law students and early career lawyers get tripped up is they think, well, I've sunk in X some number of years. I've studied for the LSAT. I paid so much money for law school. I got to stick with this thing. But if you think about it from a different way, like our careers will last 40 or 50 years. And if you're spending the first few years experimenting and figuring out what's right for you, that opens you up to be doing the next 40 years, of work that you really find meaningful and it's really fit for you. And I think a lot of people look backwards and they don't look forwards. And so, some of the things that helped me were that if looking back, all along the way, I've done lots of different types of jobs. So, I had the standard career path for a lawyer, but I also started, I had a passion for politics. And so I worked on a lot of local campaigns, not national campaigns, but local campaigns for city council, Congress. And it was there that I learned how to do outreach, how to do field work, which is what they call it, which is really door knocking and cold calling. And it was there where I experimented and learned that I was good at, doing cold outreach. I was when I believed in the candidate or the product, I'm able to make cold calls really well, really effectively. That's something that I learned by trying different things while I was on the standard career path. So I think for people who are watching this, if you really want to make a move, you don't have to just dive right in. You can dip your toe in by trying, maybe a project, maybe something on the weekends or evenings or a volunteer project. You want to learn as much as possible about yourself. And then once you have some hunches, it'll give you the confidence to make bigger jumps. So when I went into legal tech, I went in as a cold caller, and I had so many other experiences where I knew that I would be good at it. I'd done sales and marketing for my own firm. I'd done lots of cold calls for campaigns. So it wasn't as risky as it might have been for someone else. So I would encourage folks to really try different things, experiment, really pay attention to learning about what's good and what you're good at, what you're not good at. And it's that knowledge, it's self-knowledge that's going to really help you in years, 10, 20, 30 years out.
Yeah, and I think that's such such an important and really powerful point is that you have the same story, and a similar thing happened to me, is this fear that since you have invested so much time and money into becoming a practicing attorney or into getting a law firm job, it's terrifying to leave it and it's terrifying to try something new. But I think the most important thing that you can focus on is your long-term career. Just like you said, if you're thinking of working 30, 40, 50 years, investing 5 to 10 at the beginning in something that you have now tried and you realized it doesn't, make you happy or fulfill you or make you excited anymore, it's totally fine to change. And that's honestly the healthy thing to do. And that's the best thing for you and for your career. And so I love that. And I know that that's, the most difficult part of the path, I would say, is the unknown, because there, up until that point, there were very clear guidelines and there were very clear standards to meet. And then now you kind of have to jump off the deep end and yeah, go with hunches and go with your gut and learn about yourself. But honestly, both personally and professionally, that's the best thing you can possibly do.
I agree, and I think we all imagine that we're going to have linear career paths, and some people do. Some people are very lucky; they get that very early on. But most people who have linear career paths, they get themselves stuck into something that they don't really like. It's not a surprise to anyone that lawyers are often the most unhappy professionals. It's because we have certain values in our profession that say you must stick to this path. You must force yourself to do these things that you're not good at or don't like. And it becomes very scary. People scare you with, oh, if you step off this path, you'll never be able to go back. And you mentioned earlier, I am active on LinkedIn, and through LinkedIn, I've learned from a lot of different people who are later in their career, and they've had very interesting careers. And it wasn't always clear that they were headed to where they were. But over time, if you pay attention to what you're really good at, what your opportunities are, some incredible things can happen. I've found that LinkedIn is one of my unique areas of expertise now. Like that's something that I've learned through my technology sales career. It's not something I would have ever imagined that I would be doing. I have a nice little audience now, who I post every day, and they engage with it, and it helps me with my sales career. It's not something I would have ever imagined, but those are the kinds of things that happen when you experiment, because the world is always changing, opportunities are opening up, you're trying new things, and I think I enjoy this a lot more than being in a room and checking over citations and doing whatever it is that associates do these days.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about LinkedIn and kind of how you got started and why that's the social platform you picked, and then kind of how you've evolved from when you first started out posting to now posting every day, and kind of why you went into that in the first place, and kind of how it's impacted your career and you personally as well.
Absolutely, yeah. So I got LinkedIn my 1L year. That was 2008. And for the next 8 years, all I did was keep it up as my online resume. And it wasn't until about 2016 or 2017, that was when I first got into legal tech sales. In the sales world, LinkedIn is used a lot because it's a great way to get in touch with buyers of technology. So, we're encouraged in our profession. I don't think this is the case in law, at least not until recently. But in tech sales, people are always encouraged to be active on LinkedIn. So I would post industry articles, and then I think about half a year in, I realized that I wasn't really getting much traction. People weren't really interested in my industry articles, but I started posting. I think I posted once, like a story. Like I forget what the story was. It was something career related, but the reception was huge. Like lots of people engaged with my content, they liked it, and so I was like, maybe I'll try to post some more. So I started posting, once a week, twice a week, and lots of people started engaging with it. They told me, a lot of people, even who they didn't, people who didn't comment or engage with it, they would tell me, in the real world, they would say, I know what you've been up to. I read your story. It was very inspiring. So I realized that actually I was getting a lot more viewership and readership than I expected. So I kept on going with it. It started helping me with my sales. But then, there was a moment when, I think I posted something a little bit controversial, and I got a talking to by my boss. And so I scaled things back a little bit, which I think, and for folks who are thinking about being more active on LinkedIn, I don't think this is going to be something you'll run into unless you write something controversial. I occasionally like to be controversial, just that's just my personality. But it wasn't until this job that I started, the director of business development at Evisort. that I started about a year ago, when I really started posting, stepping up my posting. And then about 6 months ago, probably we'll call it the end of 2019, I posted something that went massively viral. Like I'd never experienced this before, but I posted it. I think I went to bed. It was like right after Christmas, I think. And I woke up and it was like hundreds of thousands of people had viewed it, and it was just something really insane. I had more comments. I had thousands of like hundreds of comments, maybe thousands of comments. I can't remember, but I thought, well, and it helped. So it helped me with my business, because my job is to get in front of potential buyers, general counsel, agencies, things like that. And I thought, well, this is actually much more effective than doing a cold call, because I could do cold calls all day and maybe get, one person to pick up. But this way I can get in front of a lot of different people. And so I thought, well, okay, it's a new year. I'm going to commit to this for 2020. And by the way, obviously we had no idea how 2020 would shape out to be the way it has. But I thought, well, if I do it once a weekday, if I commit to that, maybe that I'll be able to grow my audience. Maybe that'll help me with my business. Maybe it'll, good things will happen. So I've been doing that. And now it's, we're almost at the middle of the year. I've grown my audience. It's helped a lot with sales, because as you can imagine, people are reaching out to me now instead of me reaching out to them. I have closed deals through LinkedIn. It's been enormously helpful. But more than that, I think it's helped me build a community during this time when we're all socially distant. I've been able to have wonderful conversations and learn so much about so many different people. And it's just created a lot of opportunities. I was recruited for an executive position at another legal tech startup, which I eventually declined. But those are the types of things that happen when you put yourself out there. And it's not without risk, but it's been very exciting for me.
That's so amazing. I absolutely love that story. And I completely agree. If similar things have happened to me in my career. If you take risks on yourself, calculated risks, that are tailored to your interests and your strengths and where you want to go in your career, or just who you are as a person, it winds up working out really, really well. And playing it safe, like you said, your career can be linear, it can be safe, it can be comfortable. But if you're looking for something a little bit more tailored to who you are as a person, or what ideally want from your career, then yeah, absolutely take that chance, and like you said, put your toe out there and see how it goes. And now in 2020, since the whole COVID-19 pandemic has hit, you've actually started having weekly, I think, is it, or bi-weekly Zoom calls. To the way that I think you described it to me was help people just meet people and network, and have that connection where we can't usually have it face to face.
Yeah, and that's another example of an opportunity that came up that I never imagined I would have. Uh, when COVID hit and we were all in lockdown, a group of my old law school friends and I we were like, oh, let's hop on a Zoom and just catch up and talk about some law stuff. And we'll invite a couple. I was like, I'll invite a couple of people from LinkedIn, see if they want to join. So I threw it on LinkedIn, and 40 people attended. And so to me, I was like, well, this is interesting. I mean, what's going on here? I don't really understand it, but let's just keep doing it. So over time, I realized that there are a couple of things that were happening. The first is that people are worried. They want to find jobs, but they don't know how to network. And even worse now, I mean, there's no networking events. So everything's moved virtual. They want a place to be able to meet other people. That's part of the reason why they joined. A part of it is also they miss social interaction. And especially I've noticed that, people like, I have a young child at home, and when you have children, it's hard to really go out to happy hours, and your life becomes, more about your family than about going out and doing professional networking. So doing it virtually, it gives you that ability to do that. And then, some people who live in maybe non-major cities, it's hard for them to get to places to do networking. So anyways, these are some of the trends that were happening. And so we've been doing these weekly meetups, and we've experimented with them. We bring in guest speakers. And then we also do breakout rooms where we have smaller groups to meet each other. So to take it back to the original point, I mean, this is something that I would never have discovered if I hadn't been active on LinkedIn and put out this invite to people. And I wouldn't have been active on LinkedIn if I wasn't in the legal tech arena. And I wouldn't have been in the legal tech arena if I hadn't experimented. And so, there's a parallel life out there for me where I stayed with, the traditional law career path. Would have been probably 10 times as unhappy now, because I would have been doing it for a lot longer. And so now I could not have imagined that I had the opportunity now to talk to you, to talk to your viewers and share my story. Like I would probably be in an office, working on a deposition or something like that. There's so much opportunity out there. The world is changing. And so these opportunities you can't predict, but if you try different things, you may be exposed to them and then it'll accelerate things a lot better. So, yeah, that's kind of my thought on that. I don't, it's kind of rambling, but, that's been my experience. It's kind of like exciting because you don't really know what's going to happen but I enjoy it.
When you transitioned from working in a firm and starting your own firm to actually going into legal tech, was there any sort of identity crisis that you had there about no longer being a practicing attorney? Because I know that that's something that a lot of people have their identity tied to is I'm a lawyer, that's what I've always been, that's what I've trained to be. And so transitioning into a non-active practicing attorney role can be really difficult for people sometimes.
It didn't really impact me too much. I didn't define myself as a lawyer, but I know a lot of people do. And, maybe if I was, 1 or 2 years out versus 5 or 6 years out when I made the move, I might have felt differently. I think you're always going to be a lawyer. As long as you have a JD, you are a lawyer. You may not be an attorney, but I think the way I thought about it was if you look at the people you most admire, we can call them, business leaders or celebrities or, like the people who are doing some really interesting work, how do you define them? If you look at, someone like Elon Musk, like, is he just a business guy? Is he just a CEO or is it something else? If you look at, some of the most people with the most interesting careers, they've kind of defined themselves in a very unique way. And so a job it should not be your identity if you want to do meaningful work. Now that's not to say, you could still be a lawyer. There's certain lawyers who are very unique in what they do, and that could be part of your identity. But I would encourage people to think more about themselves as an authentic, multifaceted personality. And it just so happens that one of the things that they're part of is this legal profession, because if you tie everything to your professional identity to just being, a lawyer, I think you really lose a lot of what makes each one of us really interesting and special. And a lot of what we bring to the table is our unique talents. So don't define yourself only by a lawyer. And it's easy for me to just say that, right? But I think that if you pair it with something else, I think you'll find that it'll be a lot more rewarding, and you won't be subject to the same restrictions as before. You won't always think I have to have this job for myself to see myself as successful. It allows you to be more flexible with the way you think about yourself.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the last question that I wanted to ask is, do you have any advice for young lawyers just starting out, maybe people heading into law school and who have their whole careers ahead of them, things that they can start thinking about now or taking steps to do now to set themselves up for a career that is very unique and personalized and not fall into some of these traps that you see lawyers falling into, which is sort of this linear progression, no questions asked, not looking around. And then, waking up 10, 15 years later, and at that point, finally realizing, hey, I haven't been happy for a while. I want to try something else. And sort of kind of heading that off before it gets to a point where it's too far down the road and they feel like they have no other option than to stay where they are.
I would say for new lawyers, well, first, do a good job at the job you have. The biggest opportunities come from your job. If you do a good job, you might get recruited to do something different. You might, get recommended. Focusing on your day job is always a good thing to do. The second thing is pay close attention to your own hunches about yourself. One of the major career regrets of people who are later in their careers is that they never followed their career hunches. So if you have a hunch that feel like you're good at something, that you're not good at something, that you maybe should take things in a different direction, like listen to that little voice inside of yourself. And that leads me to my third point, which is once you've got those hunches, act on it. And you don't have to switch jobs. You don't have to leave the legal profession. There may be a different part of the legal profession that you belong in, but start off by dipping your toe and experimenting on the weekends, at nights, have a hobby. On one of my recent meetups, I spoke with a very successful law partner who moved to litigation finance or litigation funding, which is essentially investing in cases for a financial return. He found his path because, after his day job, he would invest in small companies that he knew there was litigation related to it. and he wrote articles about it. And he didn't know what that would lead to, but he really enjoyed doing it. And so he did that, and then he got noticed by a major litigation funder, and he got brought on as a first employee. That fund turned out really well, and it kind of established his career. And if you asked him, can you, I don't know if you can replicate that, but the lesson from there for me was, he tried something different on his own time, and he didn't expect anything immediate from it. It's very similar to my story where I worked on campaigns. I didn't expect anything immediate from it, but I did learn that I was really good at doing cold outreach. So these are the types of experiments that lawyers should be running for themselves, because 5, 10, 20 years out, if you find something that you're really talented at and you really enjoy, that's got to be a major part of your professional life. And it's scary that a lot of people who are later in their careers don't even know that about themselves. So if you're a younger lawyer, take the opportunity to try to figure that out.
Excellent, excellent advice. Well, Alex, thank you so much for being with us on today's video. And guys, I'm going to link Alex's contact information in the description below, so please make sure to check him out. Follow him on LinkedIn. You are, as far as I know, Alex, right, everybody is invited to join your Zoom meetups, and so they can reach out to you and sign up for that. And I'm also going to leave in the description below a few other resources just to start giving you guys ideas of non-legal career paths that you can take as a lawyer if you guys want a starting place. And so, Alex, thank you so much for being with us on this video. It was such a pleasure having you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
All right, bye guys.